ship when I reached Jamaica, I made a stop at Sunset to say, and I'm
Well, greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, from me, and from the Wappies, including Mr. Diesel, who is muscling in on his Marty Boo. And there we have Aurora, the ravishingly beautiful Aurora. Isn't she gorgeous? And we also have the equally beautiful Babe. The joys of Wappies. There's nothing to compare with the heartwarming, pure joy of a Wappie, is there? Including my little grandson, Mr. Diesel. Well, I think I am going to get very distracted if I keep them here. So I am going to take them upstairs and resume. However, I know that several of you have asked to see them. And since this is a situation that regrettably is not going to go on forever, because I am going to be reduced to one in the not too distant future. So I am enjoying this for everything it is worth. The pure joy, the beauty of love, the beauty of Wappies. Up, say goodbye. Wanna wave? Goodbye from Mickey. Goodbye from Diesel. And goodbye from the other two girls. I will be back in a moment. Well, I'm back. And also, do you like these earrings? I love them. I was given them by a very nice person. They came from J. McCarthy, who are jewellers on Artillery Row in London, near Westminster Cathedral. J. McCarthy are the royals and aristocrats' jeweller of choice. Princess Margaret used to go there, and they used to attend to her tiara. I have been there and seen disparate people like Lady Antonia Fraser, the rather chic biographer stroke historian. They are a wonderful company, and they do things like string my pearls, as well as supply me with choice items. I've got quite a few pieces from them over the years, but this was given to me, and doesn't it match the ivory on this coral bead necklace perfectly, which in fact I got several years ago in Mexico City. I bought it, we were having lunch on a little street cafe, and one of the peasant shop, sort of young men are selling things. I mean, he can't have been more than about 10 or 12. And so I bought several items from him for absolutely nothing, it has to be said. In principle, one normally barters people down, but in a case like this, you have to barter him up and give him more, because, I mean, this cost an absolute song, and it's hand-carved, and these are all coral beads. I mean, he must have sold it to me for 100th of its value, at least the value here. But I have another pair of earrings, which I've worn before with it on this program. And I don't think they go quite as well as these. So I'm absolutely thrilled about them. And now, without further ado, I will plunge right in. Louise Manners says, Lady C, Twitter has gone viral with the story that the Duchess of Cambridge has been snubbed in Jamaica. You're Jamaican. Do you have any insight into what occurred? We know... Sorry. We know we can rely on you for the truth. Thank you. It's so kind of you. Thank you. It's lovely to be appreciated. And I'm laughing from pure joy. Sorry, not from amusement, just pure joy. It's because this is a comment that crops up time and again, and you have no idea how much it means to me. That people regard me as somebody trustworthy and reliable, because to me there is no higher praise in life than being trustworthy and reliable. And yes, my dear Louise Manners, I have been on the bongo drums, and I have been on the bush telegraph, and I have been ringing up friends in Jamaica, chief of whom has to remain nameless, but she is arguably the best connected person in Jamaica. She knows absolutely everyone, from members of the royal family all the way down. She mixes at the absolute roots level of society as well. So she has her finger very firmly on the pulse. And I did discover something really rather interesting. There is little doubt amongst people who know Lisa Hanna, the former Miss World, who is the opposition's Minister for Foreign Affairs, or obviously would-be minister as opposed to actual minister, because she is a member of the opposition party, which is the People's National Party, which is a very left-wing party. It has been in power far more than the GLP, which is the centrist party, which is presently in power. But it has been in power far more times since independence and for far longer durations than the GLP. And when you read some of the comments, only Jamaicans, Jamaicans give it right to the heart of the matter. It's quite wonderful to see. For instance, somebody saying about it in the Jamaican vernacular that the person doesn't know what the PNP is complaining about, because if they're talking about the country mashup, meaning smashed up, they're the ones who've been leading it for most of the time, and therefore the mashup belongs to them. Oh dear. Well, Lisa Hanna, who was Miss World when she was 18, she's, I think, now in her 40s. She is actually from, on her father's side of the family, a very well-known white family. The Hannas are white. Of course, this friend of mine couldn't quite place her. And my dear friend Charles Hanna, who was the head of the Hanna family in Jamaica, died about 3 years ago. So I can't ring Charles up to place her. But I seem to recall, and I could be wrong, my memory could be playing tricks with me, that her name came up in the past, and that when I asked who she was, he said he couldn't quite place her in reference to the, shall we say, established members of the family. And it would appear that her father might have been the descendant either of what somebody said to me today is an outside child, or that the marriage down the line was deemed to be inappropriate, and that so they are very peripheral members of the Hanna family, which was the leading mercantile family in Jamaica for most of the 20th century and the latter part of the 19th century. R. Hanna and Sons was the leading wholesaler, and they had the leading number of department stores in the country. They also supplied most of the other merchants with stock. Because to those of you who do not know, my father's family was one of the leading mercantile families of Jamaica, and they were subsidiaries to the Hannas. So I just make that point for what it's worth, so that you know the tremendous eminence and great wealth of the family, which was deliberately destroyed by Michael Manley, the left-wing PNP Prime Minister between 1972 and 1980, who deliberately destroyed R. Hanna and Sons empire. That's her family. She may be a collateral or a vague descendant, but the name Hanna in Jamaica means a lot. It means its wealth, its position, it's white. All of this is important in terms of what has happened with her behaviour towards Catherine Cambridge. Because there is little doubt that she is extremely ambitious. She ran for leadership of the PNP party, and she lost to Mark Golding, who ironically enough is a white Jamaican. His father, Sir John Golding, was English, and he was one of the leading surgeons in the Western world. So he was knighted for his work, and Mark Golding is the leader of the opposition, and I think it's wonderful that we have a black Prime Minister, a black Governor General, a white leader of the opposition, and Lisa Hanna, who was Miss World and is now a very ambitious, potent politician, who, although she is definitely not white, she evidently is mostly Indian, and she's evidently highly regarded in the Indian community in Jamaica, and she does tremendously good work for the Indian community because she is from a family that is associated with wealth and whiteness. She has to be the more extreme than she would need to be if she didn't have that name. Also, in Jamaica, to be a mixture of white and Indian with maybe a dash of African blood, you're primarily Indian and a member of a white family. That's not regarded as black the way it's regarded in America. So there are racial distinctions that come into play here, especially with somebody who is as ambitious as Lisa Hanna is. And there is little doubt in the minds of everybody I spoke to that she saw the moment, she seized the moment, and she's gone viral not necessarily to be rude to Catherine, so much as she realised it's a golden opportunity to upstage Mark Goldwyn, who she ran against and would like to supplant and replace as leader of the opposition. So yes, evidently the belief is she definitely snubbed her. She did it deliberately. She's very practiced in front of the camera. She was a Miss World. She was a model. She's an ace politician. She's extremely intelligent, and she knew, according to people who know her well, that if she appeared to snub Catherine when the cameras were on them, that it would go viral, and it has gone viral, and that she would upstage Mark Goldwyn. Going off some of the comments, which were saying that Mark Golding, even though he and his party are anti-monarchist and pro-republican, that he was going to seem cousin, meaning one white man going to greet another white man and a white woman. Well, of course, these are not comments that would be made about Lisa Hanna, because she's definitely not white. However, she's got enough white in her and saddled with a white name that would definitely play against her if she also didn't sort of covertly poke Catherine in the eye as and when she could, and she did. So evidently it was done quite deliberately. She knew exactly what she was doing. She did it, but she doesn't care either that she was disrespectful. But she's clever enough to know that she can deny. So at the very moment that she does it, and at the very moment that she has the advantage of this going viral, she can say, oh no, I didn't mean any disrespect. And, you know, all sorts of cover stories like it was blustery and she didn't hear Catherine. Well, you only need to look at the clip to see that she was looking in Catherine's direction. Catherine spun around, smiled at her to say something, and she immediately, with a sour face, spun around, knowing the camera would catch it. Very wily. She's evidently an ace operator, and I suspect we will hear more about her in the future as a politician. Incidentally, for what it's worth, her first husband, David Panton, was Ted Cruz's roommate at Harvard. Yeah. Very conservative. Yeah. But, you know, politicians nowadays will wear any cloak if they are ambitious enough. And I would imagine that Lisa Hanna knows only too well that Eddie Seaga, who was a white Prime Minister of Jamaica, suffered greatly because he was a member of the JLP. Had he been a member of the PNP, he could have got away with being white. But because he was perceived as being more right-wing, in fact, he wasn't right-wing, he was very centrist. He was perceived as being they used to call him a CIA agent because he was pro-American. So there are all sorts of reasons as to why Miss Hanna has played things the way she has. Clever, clever girl. And now, to get off that topic of Miss Hanna onto something else, Tina Stiles says, "Dear Lady C, thank you for your excellent dissection of the complexities regarding intersex. My pleasure. What are your thoughts about Jamaica protesting over William and Catherine's tour? Barbados has already left the Commonwealth. Now it appears Jamaica is about to jump ship, demanding reparations for the past. Personally, I think it's extremely sad seeing all Her Majesty's lifelong work going down the drain during her Platinum Jubilee and her twilight years. I was listening to Good Morning Britain today, and the reporter on the ground was claiming that Jamaicans' preferred has been. Seriously? I don't understand this negativity. Thank you." Well, Tina Stiles, there are one or two misconceptions, may I say. First of all, Barbados has not left the Commonwealth. Barbados is still in the Commonwealth. It simply removed the Queen as head of state. The political party in power did it. It could do it because of the Bayesian constitution. The Jamaican constitution is different. Unless I am very mistaken, it requires ratification from the people. So I suspect there would have to be a referendum on the matter. So that's one thing. Jamaica, if it ceases to be a monarchy with the Queen as head of state, it more than likely will still remain in the Commonwealth. And the royal family has got used over the decades to the fact that members of the Commonwealth can, shall we say, revoke monarchy, become republican forms of government, and still remain in the Commonwealth. And the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth. Although it is an elective position, it has already been agreed that upon her demise, Prince Charles will be the head of the Commonwealth. Now, one of the reasons for that is that most political Commonwealth leaders appreciate the fact that the British monarchy is incorruptible and neutral. Well, I'm sorry to say it, but many of the Commonwealth governments are whoppingly corrupt, whoppingly. And they know that if one of their own were the head of the Commonwealth, and you're head of the Commonwealth for your lifetime, that it would be a breeding ground for corruption. So that's one of the reasons why, in fact, royalty used to be imported into countries. For instance, into Belgium, when Belgium became independent, the crown was offered to various princelings before it was offered to Prince Leopold of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, who was Queen Victoria's uncle. The same was true of Bulgaria. Bulgaria ended up with a Saxe-Coburg-Gotha king, but before that it had another princeling, a Battenberg princeling, who was effectively booted out because of his ineffectuality. It happened in Greece because these countries all understood that if one of their own citizens became monarch, that would alter the balance of power within the country. and cause problems in the future. So a reason for having monarchy has been neutrality and lack of personal advantage, which of course is one of the reasons why monarchy is not supposed to commercialize itself and monetize itself, because then it's beginning to do the things that ordinary citizens do. So I make that point for what it's worth. I'm not sure that the Queen is regarding countries becoming republics as a loss of her life's work. In fact, I would be pretty sure that's not the case. I actually haven't asked her, let's put it that way. But I know enough about the subject to know that that wouldn't actually be her thinking. What she would bitterly regret would be if the Commonwealth were to split asunder. That would be a loss of her life's work, because the Commonwealth matters very greatly to her. I have been speaking to people in Jamaica who tell me that the way William and Catherine have been greeted is heartwarming. People have been screaming at them how much they love them. The media have an agenda and they are pushing the agenda. First of all, by and large, the media in the Western world wants bad news. It wants controversy over fact. It wants sensationalism over moderation. And for all of those reasons, they have whipped up a tiny group of people, numbering maybe 100, the Advocates Network, which is a coalition of Jamaican politicians, businessmen, doctors and musicians, who wrote an open letter detailing 60 reasons why the monarchy should compensate the country of Jamaica for slavery. But they have also been and we will come to that in the next question. I'm not going to deal with that in this question. But the Advocates Network have also been promoting protests. Now, the protest in Belize was tiny, and the people who protested were a handful compared to those who said, no, we want William and Catherine. That was not reported, evidently. And the same thing, I'm told, has happened in Jamaica, where they have maybe 100 people protesting about reparations and being a republic, while thousands have been greeting William and Catherine, delightedly telling them how fond they are of them. And that's not being reported upon. I understand that when Catherine and William went down, or I think it was William alone, but Catherine went as well, to Trenchtown. Trenchtown, I've never been to Trenchtown. People like me never went to Trenchtown because Trenchtown was the deepest slum in Kingston. And it wasn't safe to go to Trenchtown, ever. Well, William and Catherine went. They were greeted with open arms. Jamaicans are soccer mad, so is William. I am told that they were busy screaming how much they love him. So, Jane Coleman says, excellent to see you, Lady C, I have just been looking online for news in the Jamaican media about the royal visit. I would very much like to hear your opinions on the calls for slavery reparations and dropping Her Majesty and her heirs as the head of Jamaica's government. Her Majesty in a wheelchair. I can understand the desire for dignity at her age, but having my mother finally giving into the reality of using a wheelchair, I feel that there is no need for loss of dignity if carefully managed. Many people have become paraplegics while young, but have remained individuals admired by many for how they have dealt with the blow to their independence and mobility. That's my personal opinion, at least. I believe Her Majesty's dignity will survive intact. Well, I will take the wheelchair aspect first and then revert to the Jamaican aspect. You know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was 4 times President of America, was never photographed in a wheelchair. Maybe it's old-fashioned, but political leaders, and a queen is an apolitical political leader, would prefer, I would venture to say, to not be representative of vulnerability. And yes, if down the line she needs to be in a wheelchair, I'm sure that will be addressed. But she doesn't want to be photographed being maneuvered into a position. And I don't think that's any denigration of people who are in wheelchairs. She's not putting down people who are in wheelchairs. She simply doesn't want the whole palaver, because that will become the news, not the event. And she doesn't want infirmity to be the feature. The feature should be whatever the event is. She's representing the nation. She's representing the crown. She's representing the people of this nation. It's not about her. It's never been about her. And I agree with her. She doesn't see why it should now become about her. And I hope you understand the distinction. Now, insofar as the Jamaican media are concerned, of course, Lisa Hanna's snub has gone viral, which she knew it would. The Jamaican protests, all 100 of the protesters, they have been in the news. And all of the good things are very vaguely in the news, but not quite so much. What is in the news is Jamaica's demand, and Lisa Hanna has been beating this drum. And indeed, successive politicians of all complexions, both racial and political, have been beating the drum of reparations. Well, it is ludicrous. Why would the British people, 200 years after the abolition of slavery, be expected to stump up for something that their ancestors did 200 years ago? Reparations, for those who are not ignorant, and clearly we're dealing with ignoramuses. Reparations are customarily imposed upon an aggressor after a war. They have been shown to be systematically destructive. We only need to look at what happened with Germany. in the last war to see that the Treaty of Versailles was a disaster. If you go back in history even further, when the French conquered various German states, which they attacked, they imposed draconian reparations, which were bitterly resented and caused no end of animosity. That was right after a war. There's supposed to be a 200-year gap. I mean, excuse me, what planet are these people on? Also, why would the British nation be the only nation that should be compensating people for slavery? What about the Nigerians? What about the Ghanaians? They are descendants of the kings and the tribal leaders who sold their own people into slavery. Not only to the British, they continued doing it throughout the 19th century, well into the 20th century. We also get to people like the Irish. The Irish were shipped as slaves by Cromwell to Jamaica and Barbados. Are they going to be compensated, or is it just black people that are supposed to be compensated now? Because they're black. What about white slaves? What about the slaves from the Barbary Coast? What about the North Africans who were busy raiding Cornwall and stealing white people and kidnapping them and taking them back to the Barbary Coast? What about the Ottoman Empire? I can go on and on. The whole thing is a political quagmire orchestrated by divisive racists and politicos who have no sense of responsibility or interest in harmony. They are only interested in grandstanding and making points that they will regard as self-serving where their supporters are concerned. The whole thing is ludicrous. It shows an ignorance of history and an ignorance of ethics and morality, because I seem to understand, and I know I'm not wrong, that we are responsible for our actions and not the actions of our ancestors, irrespective of class or colour. That is the basis upon which proper justice is founded. Anything else is amorality posing as conscionability. Perlife says, it's Perilife says, Lady C, may I ask if such a couple as Harry and Meghan has existed before in royal or aristocratic circles? And if so, what became of them? I find myself wondering to what kind of end such a couple may come. They only have so many feet in which to shoot themselves. Oh gosh, I believe this. Perilife, I love you. I have only recently discovered your channel, but find it enjoyable and will certainly return! Exclamation mark. Thank you. Oh, and Perilife says thank you, and I say thank you. Well, Perilife, insofar as I am aware, Harry and Meghan are a one-off. Thanks be to the Lord. There is no parallel in royal or aristocratic circles of a couple who would have behaved the way they have behaved. There have been other misfits. There have been other people with personality disorders, with drug problems, with drink problems, with rebellious issues, with contrariness to the point of destructiveness. But there has never been the combination and the application such as we are seeing. R. Oma says, "Hello, Lady C. Hope you're enjoying the sunshine. I certainly am. We've been blessed with lately. In regard to Meghan's surrogacy claims, it would be put to rest if her antenatal team spoke out in her defense and explained why the bump was shrinking inside, stroke swaying side to side. Her makeup artist, Daniel Martin, sobbed on TV defending her, so why can't her antenatal team put a stop to the surrogacy accusations? Much love to you and the puppies." Well, Oma, I think that is a very good and constructive comment that you have made. I have actually privately suggested in the past that it would behoove the royal family generally, and Harry and Meghan particularly, for this matter to be cleared up once and for all, so that the unseemly speculation could come to an end. Because you can't blame people for speculating when there is room for speculation. And I have actually suggested this privately. It has fallen on deaf ears. Now, it is not for me at this point to say why it has fallen on deaf ears. Also, Harry and Meghan are busy denying everything else. That any little, "Oh, no, I didn't say that those were 3 grains of sand. I said they were 2. I'm going to sue you." Oh, can you can you believe it? That ghastly newspaper said that I have 3 more strands of hair in my head than I do. You gotta sue. You gotta deny. Why aren't they denying it? Well, it keeps them in the news. It keeps them to the forefront. If they want to do a victim narrative, they can use this as being pilloried unfairly. There are all sorts of reasons beyond the most apparent and self-evident ones as to why they are allowing the perpetuation of rumours which, by the look of it, they created themselves. The whole thing is interesting, and I think we will see in the passage of time what the outcome is. MM says, Dear Lady C, I have heard that the National Enquirer in the US has published an article saying that Just Call Me Harry and Miss Chicken Parts are speaking with lawyers about separation/divorce. Do you know if there is any truth in this? I always look forward to watching your videos and never miss one. Best wishes, Maria. Well, Maria, the National Enquirer has also broken many a story about visits from Martians. So I think some of what they say can be taken with a pinch of salt, although every now and then they have been well known to break good news stories. So, speculation about them speaking with lawyers about a separation or a divorce. Well, I know they speak to lawyers constantly about everything else, but I don't think we want to be too optimistic. You know, every marriage has its ups and downs, but I think they are solidly married until it is no longer viable where their self-interest is concerned. Now, that is true of most breakups, some less calculated than others, but we won't go into what degree of calculation would be required for a separation or divorce. But I wouldn't hold my breath if I were you. I don't think there's going to be a separation or a divorce tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Bitter Beauty says, I completely agree with Mary Walsh. She puts everything into words much better than I ever could. Is it true that Meghan didn't know the difference between Frogmore House and Cottage when she agreed to live there, and that she was upset when she saw the cottage? Well, my understanding was that they wanted Frogmore House and that they were offered Frogmore Cottage. So you can draw your conclusions from that, because I would imagine that Meghan might have been rather happier to stay in Britain had they been given Frogmore House, or better still, Windsor Castle, and had they been allowed to decamp and march for 6 months, well, half their time, let's put it that way. Not 6 months there, 6 months here, but back and forth, 1 foot in the souk and the other foot in the royal camp. Living, hopefully, with a bit of luck, in Windsor Castle. What about Buckingham Palace? But other royals live in Buckingham Palace, so that was never on. But Frogmore House, my understanding was that, yes, they wanted Frogmore House. And maybe she thought it was Frogmore House. And what a shock that was to discover that Frogmore Cottage, which is a substantial size house, it was good enough for the Grand Duchess Ksenia of Russia, who was Tsar Nicholas II's sister, and the Romanov family was the richest family on earth, and until the downfall of the Romanov dynasty, was truly the grandest royal family on earth. But it was good enough for Grand Duchess Ksenia, but it clearly wasn't good enough for Meghan from LA. What can I tell you, my dear? It shows the difference between Grand Duchess Xenia's lack of pretentiousness and Meghan's possession of an increased value beyond that which her worth possesses. P. Lowe says, "Hello, Lady C. Did you see Harry admitted he reads all the comments on social media in his ridiculous court filing? He says the Mail on Sunday hurt his feelings by telling the world the truth, and he did not initially offer to pay for police protection." Well, I have to tell you, I'm hoping that Harry succeeds in managing to get the law changed so that any newspaper that hurts the feelings of a public figure will have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, torn off them like strips. Because then I, who have had far greater cause for complaint, will end up being a very rich woman indeed, because I'll simply start to complain about how my feelings have been hurt so bitterly too. Oh, sorry, wrong sniffles. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Ludicrous. But what is the world coming to when a prince of the United Kingdom and a royal duke is issuing proceedings against a newspaper for speaking the truth and hurting his feelings? Why were his feelings hurt? It's the truth. Harry never offered to pay for his protection initially. He only offered to pay for it when it became a card worth playing, after it was apparent that there was little or no likelihood of his offer being accepted. Disingenuous, one could say. But I don't recall Harry as having been particularly disingenuous, or indeed bright enough to be disingenuous. So I wonder where that came from. Pity Mickey isn't here. Otherwise I'd ask her to ferret out a flying pig or two. Rainbow Bright 899G says, "Lady C, you were mentioned on Remarkable Friends with Thomas Markle. Your thoughts?" Yes, Thomas Markle has evidently mentioned me on both his programs, and I have looked at them. And I would recommend that anybody who is interested in the subject of the Sussexes, and really just interested in human nature and what happens when people are unraveling and their lives are unraveling in front of us, and who causes what, that you look at Thomas Markle's channel. He comes across as, and I have been told he's a very nice, decent, kind, retiring man who only ever wanted to be behind the camera, never wanted to push himself forward. I have been told by people who knew him well, like Gigi Perot, the former child star who taught Meghan for years. And Thomas Markle was always at the school helping out in the drama productions, that he is a wonderful, kind, decent man. I see no evidence of anything to the contrary. Yes, I gather he has said that this channel inspired him, which is lovely. And he's also said nice things about me on the second show. And I have to tell you, my heart goes out to him. And I just don't understand on an atavistic level how any child can treat a parent like that, even if the parent deserved it, and when it's so apparent the parent doesn't. But even if the parent deserved it. I mean, you know, when I was growing up, my father was so embarrassed by the situation regarding the fact that I had been assigned the wrong gender at birth, and he didn't want the scandal, that he used to seriously suggest to me that I take a dose of rat poison and that would be the way to solve the problem. Which, I mean, it was a solution. It certainly would have spared him the embarrassment of everybody knowing, even though everybody knew. I mean, it was just crazy time. But did I hold it against him? No. I thought, well, he's my father. Everything's been resolved. It took him until shortly before his death, incidentally, to apologise. So we're speaking about another 20-something years. But I didn't even expect an apology. I thought, he's my father. It was an extraordinary situation. He handled it badly. But, you know, nice people do terrible things. And terrible people do nice things. But your father is your father. Really don't get it. I mean, there are ways and means of going about things if you are disaffected. And I am afraid that humiliating your family the way she has humiliated the whole of her family, both sides of it, with the exception of her mother, is truly perplexing to anybody with a moral compass, or a moral compass that heads due north. Let's put it that way, because I suppose if your moral compass is all over the place, that's another matter altogether. On that note, I would say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember, keep the questions coming in. This can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.